Hey everyone, it's Caitlin. This is WoolJewel Podcast, and we are on episode 13. It has been about a month since my last video, so I will get into why later, but for now I'm just going to announce a couple things, and then I'm going to show you what I've been working on in that time, and then I'll save all the chit-chat stuff for the end. So before I jump into it, I want to mention a couple knit-alongs going on. The Great Unravel 2017 has been extended to July 17th. We noticed there was a lot of people knitting garments, so we wanted to give everyone a chance to have more time to finish them. If you're not familiar with this knit-along, I'm co-hosting it with Celeste from Yarn to Table and Taylor from Wool Needles Hands. So if you think that unraveling a thrifted sweater and using the yarn to knit something new sounds fun, head over to my Ravelry group, WoolJewel Podcast. WoolJewel is one word, and you can find all the rules there and get inspiration. There's tons of people making really cool stuff, and yeah, I know that, there's less than a month left of this knit along, but there is a 100 gram minimum, so if you unraveled something small or unraveled a whole sweater and then just knit something small with it, only 100 grams, you could definitely still have time to do this. All the info can be found in my group or Taylor's and Celeste's groups as well. All right, so my camera battery died, and it took a while to recharge the battery. I had some time to reflect, and I realized that I was super rude and I didn't mention the awesome prizes that I have for the knit-alongs. So Clara from Studio C, she is a yarn dyer, and I will link to her Etsy shop below. She also makes project bags, so she donated a bag for the Great Unravel prize. So this is it. It's gorgeous. I love this color. I love this print. And it has a really nice drawstring closure, and there is even a zip pocket inside. Another prize I have is from Anna of the Dunkelgrun podcast. She naturally dyed this skein. This is a merino DK. It's superwash, and she dyed this with logwood. It is gorgeous. I love this like lavendery purple color. I'm gonna have two winners. I'm gonna have a winner for the overall entries, and then I'm gonna have another winner drawn from the people who knit garments. So the other prize, and this is mine, so it looks used because it is used, and this is made by Stina from StiniksaKnits.com. I really hope I'm saying that right. I will also link that below, but she makes these little drawstring project bags, and it's kind of blowing out, but it has these pastel colors, but it's really cute. It's a really good size. Right now I have my granny stripe blanket in here and my project for the Great Unravel in here as well, so I will get to that later. Stina has also very generously donated a copy of her new hat pattern. It's really cute. So that hat pattern is a DK hat pattern. So there will also be a DK skein of yarn to go with that. I think that's it. So I am going to pick up where I left off when my camera died. The other knit along I have going on is the Any Sock'll Do KAL. So this is for any socks that you are knitting that you will not be submitting into another knit along. So there's pretty much no rules about like what types of socks they are, or there's no minimums for yarn or anything like that. The only rule is that you are using my KAL because you didn't want to, or you couldn't enter your socks into a different knit along. So everybody should get a chance to win a prize for any pair of socks that they knit with mine or somebody else's knit along. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna jump in. I'm just gonna show you guys what I've been working on. Today might be kind of a weird episode in terms of length or like what I end up talking about, because I am trying to squeeze this episode in while I have family visiting. So whenever they get home, I'm just gonna have to stop filming. So we'll see what I get done today. What I'm wearing today is my first finished object, and this is the Dechaine top by Leila Raabe, I think. Leila, R-A-A-B-E. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm going to say Raabe. But anyway, so this I knit out of a, oh, there's a really loud plane going across right now. So the yarn for this is a cotton tape yarn. I got it from Wool and the Gang, but it's made by Rowan, and it kind of has this like distressed look to it. I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of black, and then it has, looks like it's been distressed, and it's kind of a taupey color. I think they're calling it stonewashed. Anyway, I'll list it below so that you know what yarn I actually used. I haven't really ever made anything like this before. It's definitely a really summery top. I don't knit with cotton a lot. This cotton feels, it kind of feels more like linen than the cotton that I have used before, which was really soft. And I don't want to say this is too crispy like some linen is, because it is soft and comfortable to wear. But yeah, I really liked knitting. I thought that knitting with a tape yarn was really fun, and it went by really fast because this whole thing was on size 10.5 needles. I will see if I can stand up and show you what this looks like. I guess I'm not standing up, I'm just scooting back, but you can kind of see what that looks like. And I'm wearing white underneath it so that you can kind of see the lace a little bit better. Yeah, so I really love this a lot. I did make a few modifications. I knit the smallest size, I believe, because it's so wide that even though I don't wear an extra small or usually knit an extra small, I figured I didn't want to be swamped by it. But the length of the smallest size was comically short. It was like, it just barely covered my chest, and so there was no way I could wear it. So I just knit an extra few repeats of the lace pattern and just went until I felt like stopping. It was pretty easy to know when to stop because the swatch that I knit, I blocked, and the gauge actually stayed exactly the same after blocking. So that actually made it really easy to know when to stop. The only thing I don't like about this is, even though I knit the same amount of rows on the back panel as the front, the back is actually super, super short compared to the front. So I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do. It kind of makes this frowny shape. It's like a really wide rectangle, so it kind of hangs down on the sides, and then the middle goes up like that. It actually, like, it's not the worst look, but it just hits in kind of a weird spot for me, and I don't like that. Like, I don't mind a cropped anything. I like crop tops, crop t-shirts or whatever, but I think that it's weird that the front hangs down lower than the back, and that's because this lace is kind of a swervy shape. So the bottom kind of makes this swerve, and it hangs down much lower. So yeah, I don't like that. I can't decide if I want to add some length in the back, but then I'm not really sure how I would do that because I don't want the sides to end up being uneven. I thought about doing some short rows, but then it has this border on the bottom, like a garter border across the back at the bottom, and then so if I did short rows just to kind of even it out and make it flat instead of this frowny shape, that I'm not really sure how I would incorporate that border. Of course, I do have the option of just ripping back and re-knitting it, but I'm just like not really sure how I want to go about it. I also might just leave it and deal. So that's the story of this top, but I really like it. I think the color's really nice. I like the texture that this stonewashed yarn has. I really wanted to use a suggested yarn, which was the Quince & Co. Kestrel, which is like an Aran weight linen yarn, and I just couldn't afford it, unfortunately. I spend a lot of money on wool, but that's the kind of thing, like I don't knit with linen a lot, and I didn't want to drop that much on a yarn I'd never seen or touched in person, and on a fiber that I don't really use. Honestly, the stone-washed Rowan from Wool and the Gang, it's actually kind of about the same price if you end up getting the same yardage, but I had a coupon. I had a half-off coupon, so that made it worth it. And now I know, and I'm happy using that yarn again. The gauge ended up being, I think, pretty close to what was recommended in the pattern, so yeah, there you go. That's it for this top. I have another finished object to show you. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm sure you've seen it already, but I have finished my Parachutey. Okay, so in the last episode, you guys saw the beginnings of this, and it's been so long since I filmed that I've just completely finished it and worn it and blocked it and all that good stuff since then. So here it is. It is awesome. I love it. I think everybody needs a Parachutey in their life. I knit the size large. If you're not aware, this is like more of a tank top pattern. I'm very short, so I figured if I knit a couple sizes larger, it would be close enough to mini dress length. So I did. I knit the size large, and the only modification I made was to do the size small for the neck shaping, which was really easy to do because I don't really have broad shoulders, and I'm pretty short, and yeah, it ended up working perfectly. The only thing was, after I finished, it wasn't quite long enough to be like something I could actually call a dress. So I just added this bottom stripe and the border. So normally this I-cord border would be up here, but I think I really like the stripe on the bottom. I think that it makes it look more complete and kind of ties together the front and the back panel. I didn't plan on this, but I really ended up liking it after I did it. I kind of did this, I don't know if you can call it an ombre, but I had more of this Madeline Tosh, the Radness speckle, and then I thinned it out as I got to the bottom, and then I did the opposite with the neon. But for most of these, I did a mohair neon, so it's slightly see-through in the back, which I really like. And then at the bottom, I actually got really tired of knitting with the mohair because I was using some blunt needles, and it was actually pretty difficult to knit with this mohair with the needles I had. And I didn't want to knit this whole big stripe with that yarn and those needles, so I just switched to a 4-ply merino in the same color, and it worked perfectly. This is actually my own hand dyed that I had already dyed, but it exactly matches this neon, so that worked out perfectly. And also, that is the stripe that goes across my butt, and nobody needs to see that through my dress. I do have to wear something underneath it regardless, because this is the arm opening. It goes past my waist, so this is more of like a cover up, or I wear like a bodycon dress underneath it. And yeah, because it still is it's pretty short. Like, it's a really short dress, but it's so wide and flowy that it kind of doesn't really matter. But I love it. It's so fun. I wore this, first time I wore this was on my Paris trip with Ben last week. I finished it and blocked it the day before we left, and I was so excited that I was going to be able to wear it. And I put it on, and we went to La Bianame, and I bought some yarn, and it was amazing. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this. I want to make another one, but I think I might wait till next spring, because if I make another one now, it's going to be the exact same colors, because I just don't have that many more scraps to work with. Okay, So I'm gonna get into works in progress now because that's all I have finished. I only have a couple going on. I actually have a bunch of things on the needles right now, but everything I've shown you guys, like the Sincerely Louise kit, I actually haven't done any work on since I last showed it to you, so I'm not gonna pull it out. But yeah, I do have a couple of things to show you. So first thing is some leg warmers I'm making. Normally this is the kind of project I would do 2 at a time, but I'm not using a pattern for this. I'm kind of creating my own thing. So here's the first one. It looks really weird, but I am making these for a dancer, and I don't want to say who it is because they're a gift. Okay, sorry, my camera died. So yeah, so here I switched to a 2.75 millimeter. I don't remember what the US size is, but I think one is 2.5. So I just went up a tiny bit, but I switched to a bigger needle, and then I also switched to stockinette. And the first couple rows after the rib section, I increased from 56 to 89 stitches. So I evenly spaced, for 3 rows in a row, I increased 11 stitches per row, spread around equally. Evenly spaced. I can't talk today. So after I'm done with these, if anybody likes them enough, like it's not like a complicated pattern. I'd be happy to write it down if anybody wants to make some like this. But I thought that these would be good for dancers because I have some leg warmers and I know what I hate about them. If you want them to be functional, they have to have some sort of design to them that, like some sort of reason to be the way that they are. So the thing that I hate the most is when they're baggy too much and they slip under my heel, or if they have a heel opening, they're like too big around the foot or something, because I have smaller feet than the average adult person, I think. And there's usually just like too much going on around my foot, and even if I'm wearing leg warmers, I still want to be able to see the line that I'm making with my foot and my ankle. And what I'm shooting for is like my dream leg warmer for a dance, so we'll see how it goes. So I think what I'm going to do is keep the stockinette tube the same width up to the knee, and then at the knee I'm going to do another 2x2 rib, but it'll be wider just to fit around the knee instead of the ankle. And I can't decide if I want to make them long enough to fold over or not. So you might be wondering what this crazy yarn is. I'm going to give you a close-up. It is actually 2 different yarns. One yarn is this self-striping opal yarn. I'm so sorry. I'm really bad about throwing away the tags, and I don't remember what the colorway is, but it's cute. It has like pastel pink and yellow and some green and black kind of speckly stripes in there. Okay, so the other yarn I've got is this Zauberball, and it is a fuchsia color that it's kind of a gradient. It goes from a pink to like a hot fuchsia and then into a deeper like magenta purple, and there's some red in there. So I really like this. So the way I'm doing these leg warmers is by changing yarns every row. And I think that the effect is really cool. I got the idea from Casey Mara. She had a pair of socks on her Instagram that was 2 different self-striping yarns like this, and she was switching them every other row, and they looked amazing. And I wanted to do the same thing instead of do 1 stripe and then 1 gradient, but I couldn't find a second self-striping yarn that I thought would work well with this. So I just went with the gradient just to see what would happen, kind of as an experiment, and I really like it. I'm really hoping that there is enough left over of both of these to make maybe a pair of ankle socks or something for myself, but we'll see, because I don't know how long I'm gonna make these, because like I said, there's no pattern. I'm just kind of winging it, and I'm keeping track of everything I do in my notebook so that making the second one won't be as experimental and that they can match perfectly. Yeah, I actually knit all the way up to the knee before. I did the increases really differently and they fit me pretty well, but I was worried that they wouldn't fit her as well. It was more complicated, so I ripped back to the ribbing to do the increases all in one place instead of kind of gradually getting bigger, because I thought that they'd be more versatile that way. So yeah, I had a lot more done, and then yesterday is when I ripped back. So I did all of this last night and this morning. Yeah, that's about it for the leg warmers. I will hopefully have these done very soon because I want to give these to the intended recipient very soon. All right, so my next work in progress is my project for the Great Unravel 2017, and I am a really bad podcaster and have not even shown this yet. I'm co-hosting this knit along, and I hadn't even cast it on for this project until very recently. I started it very shortly after my last episode, which was about a month ago, but here it is. It kind of doesn't look like anything. I'm making a market bag. I wanted to create something that kind of went along with the theme of reusing, recycling, etc. And I only have about 100 grams unraveled because the garments that I chose to unravel, I didn't like the yarn, or I just kind of screwed it up in the process and accidentally cut into it, and I just like didn't get as much yarn as I wanted to. I am still looking. I have been back to thrift stores a few times, and I cannot find a wool sweater to unravel. Almost everything I found is either partly acrylic, or I just really hated the color, or so I have had some pretty bad luck in that regard, but I did get some cotton acrylic blend, and I thought that that would be a really good type of yarn to use for a market bag. And I really like this color, and I would wear this color, but I don't like the way it feels, so I didn't want to make another garment or accessory out of it. So I'm doing the market bag. And here it is. There's not a whole lot to show. It's kind of hard to see. But it is really holey and purple. So that's what's happening. This pattern is a free pattern. I don't think you can download it on Ravelry, but you can click on the link to the blog where it's posted. It is called the Weightless Produce Bag by Julie Tarsha. Taylor posted a picture of her produce bag that she's doing, and I thought it was the same one, but it's actually not, so I was wrong. But they're very similar. There's a lot of patterns like this on Ravelry, and it's going pretty quick. I just have had a lot of projects on the needles lately, and so all of them have kind of been slow progress, and this is kind of my on-the-go knitting, because it was really easy to memorize this holey lace pattern. So yeah, not that exciting to show, but I just figured I would show it because this is a knit along that I'm co-hosting, and I have been really bad and not been sharing a whole lot about it. Yeah, but actually a lot of the projects shared in my Ravelry group are amazing. People are doing awesome things with their recycled yarn. It's been really cool to see people's progress, so definitely go check it out. So this is my last work in progress that I'm going to show today. It's not the only thing left on the needles that I've got, but it's the only thing that is new, or that, everything else I either haven't really worked on, so I'm not going to show it. Unfortunately, I can't actually tell you what it is because it is a super secret test knit for a super cool designer that I'm really excited about. And I started it, and unfortunately, like this pattern, the test knitters are encouraged to like make modifications. We just have to keep track of everything. So it's not a really like set in stone pattern. So there's a lot of modifications that are left up to us, a lot of options for the design. So it has required a little bit of improvising, which also means that all the progress that I made on it, I frogged yesterday. So this is all that's left. I can say that it is a top-down garment. And so I had knit a few inches of, you know, the top part of it. But it wasn't, there was an issue with the neckline, so I frogged it and I have restarted it, so it has an I-cord neckline, and this is it. So now that I've recast on, I can start knitting for real. And I will share like little close-up shots of how the yarn is knitting up and stuff, but I can't say like what it is. I really wish I could share because I feel like it's going to be exciting, and I don't know, since a lot of it is left up to the knitter in terms of the fit and colors and whatnot, that I feel like I would have a lot to talk about while I'm knitting this, so I'm kind of bummed that I can't share it, but I'm really excited about the finished product. So since it is a test knit, I will be keeping lots of notes on this project. So when it's finished, I may or may not have a lot to say about the knitting process, and I'll definitely share it all then. The yarn I'm using is my own hand-dyed yarn. This project, another thing about it is that there was no information given to us on how much yardage or how much weight we would need to complete the project, because there's like also the option to use different weights. Like I'm doing fingering, but you could also knit the same thing in DK, but like on different size needles. So like part of the test knitter's job is to keep track of weight and yardage. So I was like, well, I don't want to just go out and buy like a ton of yarn and get a bunch of extra just in case I run out. Since I didn't know how much I can guesstimate, but if I don't have enough, then that's like really bad, especially with hand dyed when you want to get things that are kind of dyed in the same batch. But I did have this super fine merino. I had 6 skeins of it, and it is really, really soft. It's an ultra fine merino. It's non-superwash, which I'm glad that worked out, because the superwash always stretches for me. So for this garment, I really wanted to make sure that the fit was gonna be perfect, and that is easier to do with a non-superwash because the blocked finished object is going to be closer to the work in progress than it would be if it was superwash. And even if I do a swatch and I block it and I calculate like how much it grew after blocking, it's still never quite the same. When you've knit a whole garment out of it, it stretches differently, at least in my experience. So that worked out. I only had 6 of these left, and I thought that that was a pretty safe number for this project. So I dyed them 3 at a time. I had 2 batches of 3 skeins, and they turned out, I dyed them simultaneously just in 2 different pots, and they turned out pretty different. So here's one of them. This is from like my first batch. I call it the first one because they went in the pot first, but I really did them all at the same time. It's really pretty. I like it. Most of the dye process was very similar to the colorway I dyed that ended up in my So Faded sweater, the middle color, which I called Virgo. It's kind of this mauvey with oranges and blues in it. So I did mostly the same dye process. I just did less pink and purple. This is from the second batch. And they actually are pretty close, but I just think that this batch turned out more vibrant for some reason. I'm not really sure why, because I really measured everything and I did everything all the same. I don't know if this ended up having more citric acid or something in the dye bath, but I don't know. So I'm just going to alternate every row as much as I can. Yeah, and this is what it looks like all balled up. Yeah, I'm excited. So I'll share as much as I can without, you know, being disavowed from being a test knitter. But yeah, I'm really excited, and I'm really excited to see how my hand-dyed knits up. And yeah, the due date for this is July 31st. So it won't be that long before you guys get to see the finished product. That's it for works in progress. So I'll get into fluff stuff now, which is where I'm just gonna do knitting related chit chat stuff. Like I mentioned, I went to La Biennale when I was in Paris last week, which was amazing. And I had a really hard time picking out yarn. Yeah, so when I shop for yarn, I will typically, like if I'm getting yarn as a souvenir, I'll typically get really fun colors and like one skein of each. I'll buy single skeins, but right now I just feel like I have a lot of single skeins and it's like getting a little out of control. I really enjoy having bright, colorful, hand-dyed single skeins in my stash to do lots of scrappy projects because I really enjoy those. But at the same time, like there's only so many scrappy projects you can do. There's only so many pairs of socks that I even want. I'm kind of over knitting shawls right now because the amount of shawls that I have that are complete, I really love them all, and there's so many gorgeous designs out there, but I just really don't wear them enough to justify knitting like $80 worth of yarn into a shawl that's just gonna sit in my drawer. It just kind of makes me sad. So yeah, I really enjoy knitting them, and I like the creative process of picking out colors that will look great in a shawl together, and I love the fabric that they make, but I don't think I'm gonna be knitting very many shawls coming up. I'm just not like a big shawl wearer. I mostly just wear them because I knit them, and like I enjoy wearing something that I completed, like not just because it's a shawl. Like I would never buy a shawl in a store. I'm pretty much only gonna wear a shawl that I made, or if somebody gifted me one or something. Yeah. I don't know, that's just how I feel right now. So where was I even going with that? Oh yeah, that's why I don't want to be shopping for single skeins of stuff for a while now. Yeah, so I was thinking maybe I'll get a sweater's quantity of something, even though that was like a little bit more money than I wanted to spend, but I think that I'd rather spend a little bit more and get a sweater's quantity of something than add more stuff to my stash that isn't really necessary in the moment. Not that buying a sweater's quantity of yarn is necessary for me by any means. I already have like 5 sweater quantities of different yarns in my stash, just like waiting to be turned into sweaters. Anyway, I'm gonna show the yarn now. Here it is. This is just one skein, but I got 4 of these. And this is the La Biennale Driftwood Graffiti. That's the name of the colorway. It is this gorgeous like taupey silver color with these like rusty mustardy colors speckled in. And this base is 70% baby alpaca, 20% silk, 10% cashmere. This is not a typical base that I buy for a garment, but it was just so soft and gorgeous, and I love this colorway. And at the moment they didn't have any of this colorway in the shop on the merino bases. or the sock bases. So I just went with it, and I thought I'd treat myself. It has a little bit of cashmere in it. It's really, really soft. It has a nice halo to it. It's not too much of a halo, but it is a little bit fuzzy. And I thought it'd be fun to try something new. So another reason I got a sweater quantity of this was because if I bought a single skein of this base, I have no idea what I would do with it, because it just doesn't seem right to mix this with a merino or with a sock yarn. I just couldn't really picture what I would have done. So yeah, I decided I'm gonna knit something like really drapey and beautiful with this awesome yarn. Also, Amy was there. I don't know if she's watching, but hi Amy. Thank you so much for all your help. But she told me that this base is not available in their online shop, and so that kind of sealed the deal for me. When I buy yarn as a souvenir, I like to get something that I can't get anywhere else, or that's harder to, or like something local to that area. So the fact that you can only get this in their brick and mortar shop just kind of like justified me spending that much, I guess, on a sweater's quantity. I think right now I want to knit the Tegna. I don't know if it's called Tegna. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it is by Caitlin Hunter, and it is a t-shirt that is kind of boxy, and it flares a little bit and has this lace at the hem, and it is so pretty. And it's been on my list to knit for a while, but I just couldn't figure out what yarn I wanted to use, and I think that this will be perfect because the alpaca has a totally different drape than wool does. So I think that's gonna turn out really nice. If I get enough done on my test knit, then I'll go ahead and cast this on as well if I think that I can finish my test knit in time. Yeah, another thing I wanna show, some more yarn that I got. Yesterday, I went to a medieval fest, a few villages over here in Germany, and there was a spinner there, and she had a booth, and she had a bunch of hand spun and a bunch of like hand dyed roving and stuff that she was selling, and it was like super affordable. I feel like hand spun is usually really expensive, but she had really reasonable prices, and I don't have a lot of hand spun. I have a little bit in my stash, but I don't usually buy it because I feel like it's too special to knit with. Like I never know what to do with it unless you have like a huge quantity. But I can't usually afford a sweater's quantity of hand spun at a time. Like that's not something that I typically buy. So I just thought that I would get this skein because I was super drawn to the colors. Like it's a little bit crazy, but I just really liked these colors, and from far away, it's kind of a neutral. So this is 100% merino, 2-ply. It's kind of a thick and thin, but it's mostly pretty chunky, and it's 81 grams. And this was only €8, which is super cheap, I think, for hand spun. And she had a lot of yarn that was closer to 100 grams or 130 grams or something like that for like €20 or something, which is like outrageous. I think that's so cheap for hand spun. Like the amount of time it takes to spin yarn, the effort, and like how much knowledge and practice it takes to get a nice even yarn. I don't know. I don't know. But she was a really nice lady. Unfortunately, I like didn't get a card or anything, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get more, but she had alpaca roving, which I've never seen. It was so soft and squishy, and I just wanted it because it was so soft, but what would I even do with that? I'm so bad at spinning, I wouldn't wanna like destroy it. But yeah, I don't know, it was special, and I wasn't expecting to buy any yarn there. We just went to go like have a beer, walk around, and like look at people's funny costumes, and it was really fun. And I found yarn, and that was awesome. Another thing I want to mention that's knitting related is my rise sweater, however it's pronounced, that I showed a few weeks back. is now frogged, so we will take a moment to remember the sweater. Goodbye, Rays. I had fun knitting it, and I learned a lot about my choices in color and yarn, but I think that yarn is going to be better used in something else. And now that I know what the texture is like after knitting it up, I'm going to be able to make better choices for when I knit it for real, and I'll probably do that in the fall. And I'll think harder about the colors before I cast on next time. Sorry, my phone is blowing up right now. Yeah, so I think that's it for fluff stuff, because that's all the like knitting related chit chat I've got. If you want to hear a little bit about my life and like why I haven't been podcasting recently, I will talk about that in Block It Out, which is coming next. So if you were just here for the knitting stuff, then thanks for hanging out. And if you enjoy my videos, then I would super appreciate a subscribe or a like, or both, because that helps more people see my videos, and more subscribers means more giveaways. I have one coming up soon that I'll probably announce next week. Thanks again for hanging out, and I'll see you next time. All right, so for Block It Out, first things first, I have to tell you guys why I've been gone. I haven't really been gone. I just like haven't had any time to film. And like I said last time, I'm done apologizing for life happening. I don't think that anybody's actually hurt by me not podcasting, so there it is. I would love to get a video out once a week. The problem with that is that I have a small window where I can film and have time to edit in a reasonable amount of time. And if I miss that window, then I just pretty much have to miss the whole week. So the week after my last podcast, I had a dance performance. We were doing like a big Alice in Wonderland show, and there was rehearsals every single day. And the rehearsals were really long because they were pretty much running through the whole show. And I was at the beginning of the show and the end of the show, and so in between I just had to like sit around for hours. So I got a lot of knitting done, but I wasn't able to be home that much that week. Yeah, that just kind of took up the whole week, and so I was like, I'll just podcast next week. The next week I got my wisdom teeth out on a Monday, and I usually film on a Friday or over the weekend. And so I figured my surgery on Monday, like I would totally be recovered enough to film by the weekend. What I did not take into account was the fact that my mood was just in the pits. Like, it took a long time to recover. I'm actually still recovering. And I got my wisdom teeth out. Yeah, I got my wisdom teeth out on June 5th, and it is now the 25th. So 20 days. Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize it'd been that long. So 20 days later, I still have some swelling inside. I got all 4 out at the same time, so it was like a big thing. But for like the first 2 weeks after, there was a lot of swelling and a lot of pain. I was still on lots of painkillers. I was really fuzzy, and like I didn't do any knitting at all because I was pretty much just a wreck. Like I just watched a lot of TV. I tried as much as I could to get back to normal life because I can't just stop life for 2 weeks just because I'm in a bad mood because my mouth hurts. But the problem was like the painkillers. I didn't feel safe driving around if I was taking them. They made me a little foggy, and I felt like I just couldn't focus on anything because I had this constant throbbing. Yeah, so I tried as much as I could to get back to life, but it just wasn't the same. It just took me a long time to recover, and it still hurt. Like if I press on my jaw, it actually still hurts, and it's still a little swollen on the inside. The good thing is the most of the swelling has gone down, and the like constant throbbing pain has not come back. I haven't had to take my painkillers in about a week, so that's good. Get your wisdom teeth out. before you're 29. I remember the dentist telling me, like, you're gonna have a rough time recovering because, like, you're much older than you should be getting these out. And I was like, I'm not even 30 yet. Like, I'm still young, right? And then, like, he was totally right. He was like, you should have gotten these out when you were 18. So if you have the chance, just get them out. Get them out while you can recover quickly. Not to mention the fact that, like, if you've been watching this podcast from the beginning, you know that I am horrible with, like, dental stuff. I have a lot of anxiety when people start poking around in my mouth. I hate it, and I was super nervous before the procedure, and it just, I don't know, it was not a good experience. Yeah, so anyway, after that week, that's like, you know, like, even though I was still, like, basically functioning, there was kind of no point doing an episode because couldn't focus on anything, and the fact that, like, I didn't really have much to show that week because I wasn't knitting that week. But the week after, I was in Paris, and I thought about doing, like, some little vlog or something, or getting some footage of being there, or trying to get an episode really quick before we left, but there was just so much to do before we left, just getting everything in order. And my in-laws are here now. They came 2 days after we got back from Paris. So before we left on our trip, we had to make sure that the house was, like, you know, ready for house guests and packing and all that good stuff. So just, like, you know, my window for filming came and went, and I didn't have any opportunity to do it. And now my in-laws are here. So I'm filming today. They are hanging out with my husband. He had a performance. He plays jazz, and so he had a performance this morning in a town that is about 2 hours away. So they went and did that, and I see him play all the time, so it's like, it's not the end of the world if I miss an opportunity to see him play. But they haven't seen him play in, like, years and years, so they definitely wanted to do that, and they are stopping at a few touristy places on their way back. So I am taking the opportunity while everybody's out of the house to sit down and do this. But yeah, that's what's going on with me. That's why I just, like, haven't even been around to do this. I have missed doing it. I really enjoy doing this every week, and I like engaging with other knitters online. But yeah, I promise that I will film episodes when I can film episodes. I just can't promise that it's gonna be super regular all the time. Other than just letting you know what's been going on, I don't really have a whole lot to share life-wise. Right now we're kind of in vacation mode because we have family visiting. We're gonna be out of town next week. We're gonna do a little road trip to Munich, and we're gonna see some castles, and we're gonna see some awesome scenery. So I will hopefully get some video footage of that and some photos to share with you guys. But yeah, another thing is that Ben is deploying at the end of August, and he's gonna be gone for 3 months. So we're really just taking this summer to spend a lot of time together, and as much free time as we have, we want to have memorable experiences and go on little trips and hang out with people that we love. So yeah, that is going to affect my, you know, podcasting a little bit. This is still a priority to me, so I will still be doing this. I'm obviously gonna keep knitting, and as long as I keep knitting, I'm gonna have stuff to share with you guys. But there's not a whole lot of other stuff going on in my dance world. That is also kind of on hold because the semester ends at the end of June, so there's only like 1 more week left of actual classes, and then they kind of go into a summer schedule, which means only Thursdays are classes. So they put, like, all the classes that they offer are kind of squished into every Thursday. So it's going to be like a lot of mixed levels and like mixed attendance. So like you kind of never know what it's going to be like. And yeah, I felt like I was really getting in a groove and like really improving and getting good workouts all the time, and making dance a priority meant that I was like getting better exercise and going more regularly. And now this is just kind of like throwing a wrench into the works. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I think I'm gonna try to take a few private lessons just to keep the momentum going. But yeah, after the show, after we did our Alice in Wonderland show, I got really excited about ballet. Like, I think that the reason is because I've never really performed like on a stage. I've always done classes because I think that they're really fun, but I've never had an opportunity to like dance on an actual stage in front of an actual audience. Yeah, so that was a totally new experience for me, and it was just really fun. Like, I had a lot of fun doing it, and I got super excited about it. And I was like, oh, maybe I should have a podcast about dancing so I can just talk all about ballet to only people who want to hear about it. But I can like barely keep up with my knitting podcast, so I had to like talk myself down out of this excitement and just like reason with myself and tell myself one podcast at a time. Like, I can't have two because I can barely handle the one. So, you know, to kind of make a compromise with myself, I made another Instagram account that is like all my ballet stuff, because I'm finding that this adult ballet community, like non-professional adult ballet dancers, have a huge Instagram community, and a lot of them do have YouTube channels. And so I'm kind of just discovering this whole world of people who like really, really love dancing, but they're not professionals. And it's a really welcoming community. You don't have to be like the perfect ballerina or even have like the perfect dancer body or whatever to share what you're doing and to be excited about it. So that's been really motivating to me. It can be a little bit discouraging when like your feet or your flexibility don't look exactly like all the people who are posting on Instagram, but then you find people that do look like you, and it's really exciting. And reading about other people struggling the same things that I'm struggling with, it's just comforting, and I can feel like I can share what I'm doing without, you know, mean internet people telling me that my legs aren't long enough. So yeah, that's been fun to discover. So I think that's actually it for this week. I need to stop filming so that I can start editing, because like I said, there's family in town. I have limited time. They're away today, but when they're back, I need to spend time with them and not be on my computer editing all day. Yeah, it's good to be back. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys not in a month, but you know, closer to a week or 2 weeks when I have time to do the next episode. So, you know, say hi in the comments. Let me know what you guys have been up to. If you're doing the knit alongs, be sure to get over to the group and enter your knit along pictures and experiences, and if you have an FO, I am excited to see it. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time, and thanks again for watching, and always remember, home is where it's